Well done, Mary J. What very good though. Your FBI was fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. It was yeah, it was interesting talking to a camera and.
Yeah, it's tough, eh? Did they have you?
It
Did
is
you
tough.
go to the offices or you did it from home? How did that work?
We did it at the Central City Conference Center. They hired out a room there.
Okay, yeah, it must be very odd.
Hi, Mazondile.
How's it, everyone?
No, can't complain. So perhaps just I know all of you, but you don't know each other. Just if you can just each of you just do a quick introduction, introducing yourself, and perhaps say what is your interest in today's discussion. So just as a quick introduction, whoever wants to go first can go.
I don't mind going first. So my name's Susan. I've been doing the financial coaching course with Hendrik, and we're on to the 7th week now. Been magnificent. I've loved the journey so much. So thank you, Hendrik, very much. So I live in Durban, and very much home-based as we speak, as we all are. And today, well, I think it's just interesting, like the attitude of the coach, what you are going to be asking us to explore today. So I'd say I'm curious about what the project for the hour is.
Thanks, Susan.
Not at once.
Totally. While you started, you can go, Mazwan.
Yeah, I might as well, guys. Zwandile Jali, as you can see at the back, I'm from PPS. What's my interest in this? I look after PPS's agency. I look after PPS's there's a specialist team that focuses on giving financial coaching. And then we've just recently launched a world business that also wants to move into the realm of financial coaching beyond holistic life planning and and a fiduciary business. So that's my interest. Always nice to know what's externally is happening. So it's my way of scanning the external environment in terms of what are the emerging trends, if are we missing anything, and if there's any best practice that we think we're doing great, just to also share it with you guys. I think that's why.
Thanks, Mazwandile.
Cool.
I'm happy to go next. Mary J. Faree. I am an independent financial planner and financial coach, running my own business called My Journey to Freedom. And I love everything that's to do with coaching and financial planning. So yeah, it was really exciting to be invited to this by Marguerite previously and join the last conversation. And when I saw the invite again, I just couldn't say no. It's very inspiring for me to see that there are people in our industry who are as excited about or curious about coaching as I am. So here to learn. I'm very excited about this topic too, as well as if there's anything I can share, to share as well.
Thanks, Mary J.
Okay, I've been running my own practice since 2004. When I started a fee-based practice, but I've always wanted to go deeper than that with my clients. And I think I've intuitively used some coaching principles, but nothing really formalized. And I thought this year would give me the ideal opportunity to actually start formalizing my training in that. So I've been doing the coaching course with Hendrik for the past 8 weeks. Really enjoying the journey and connecting with other professionals who are like-minded.
Thanks, Marguerite.
Yeah, I'm Johan Marais. I've got my own business, which is financial and business support. And I'm also a business partner with Hendrik in the wellness practice. For me, coaching is part of the job that we are doing when we deal with clients, when we deal with advisors, planners. So I get a lot of information by listening to other people that's got the same passion as well.
Thanks, Johan. So yes, I definitely open conversation for us, and as we are, this forum is really to share with each other. To both Mary J and Ms. Wandili's point, is that we can share with each other. And due to COVID, I had the privilege to attend the Financial Therapy Association's conference this year, and yeah, so there's quite a few things that was presented there that just dusted off some of the old things one somewhere in one's life came across, and the one presentation was really great, relating to specifically using scaffolding or narrative therapy then as part of a tool to engage with our clients. And I thought, and then it was something when I was doing PCC that Craig and Janine just touched on as part of one of our sessions. And then I went and looked through all my old papers, and then specifically I did narrative discussions with Shanae Swart, which is based in Pretoria, level 1, 2, and 3. Quite a few years back, and I actually went and looked again at her work, and then I thought, it totally got my curiosity going. And then most probably from an ontological coaching view, also saying, how does this fit into the whole thing of, if we want to have deep changing and transformational conversations, moving from processes to changing the way we look at the world and being as human beings. How do we influence the language our clients are using and the moods, and then how they embody whatever in their bodies? And narrative therapy, when I looked back at it again, was fitting for me in that, and it felt for me it's just another tool we can just revisit today again and have a discussion and get everybody's input around it. And just perhaps a little bit of history on narrative maps as such, and then the concept of scaffolding. The concept of scaffolding for me was fitting really into that picture of us as financial coaches, as financial advisors, because as builders use scaffolding around the building to just put that brace around for them to move into those spaces where you would not normally get to as a ladder. And then after fixing whatever they need to fix, they remove the scaffolding. That's the concept of scaffolding, to say, and we can nearly, in my mind, it's like just in time support to our clients, to be there in the moment when we see there's something that's a concern or a breakdown for them. Put the scaffolding up, help them in terms of changing their story, and then we can remove the scaffolding again, because we enable them to build that skill so that they can then embrace a new way of being and have got the new competency with dealing whatever they need to deal with. And then just interesting, scaffolding is used very much in education, and that's like the cue cards the teachers use in school, is to say, what is those things we can use as distinctions for our clients, so that our clients can learn the difficult concepts we sometimes have in our industry. And also we like, I always, when I talk to students at the varsity, I say we've most probably one of the biggest professions that's got such a large obligation on us, because we bring the concept of financial planning on the one side, which is the sums and the figures. We bring the concept of legal, the contracts, and then in the new way as financial coaches, we also bring the human element. And I see in America, there's a new term, phenomenology, that they call it, when the three things come together. We bring those three things together, and we're actually helping our clients. So how do we bring that scaffolding actually then around the building or around our clients, to help our clients to create new stories? And the other thing is, if we look at narrative therapy, there's basically 4 themes around narrative therapy. And the first one is to say, we just get the client to tell their story. So, and through them telling their story, we unlock whatever is the breakdowns, because our clients also not always know what the breakdowns are, and it's part of our job to bring awareness there. And that's why we take a coaching approach and not a specialist approach, because by specialist we'll say, okay, now I understand what is wrong, and we'll jump in and we'll give expert advice. While with coaching, we'll say we're curious to see what you are saying actually means, or what do you mean by saying that. So by being curious. The other one, which is very powerful about working with narrative therapy, and that's where David Epstein and Michael White, which is most probably to a large extent the fathers of narrative therapy in the 1980s, working from Australia, is externalizing the problem. So and there's two things important, and that's one of the principles of narrative therapy, is to say the behavior we're seeing from clients is not the client's identity, and it's not the client, because clients put on the jacket of whatever the story is that they're telling themselves, and that becomes their identity. Is to saying, but what we're seeing is, and in one of the pre-assumptions of NLP is for me also very powerful, that fits here, is to say clients will always do the best with the resources they've got. So is how to just bring it out, and the clients see there's more. They've got more possibilities, that they human beings, and they human storytellers that can change the narrative they living in. And also then, as coaches, we are very respectful that the clients is then actually the expert of their own lives. Although when we hear the story, we tell ourselves most probably, and that's one of the biases we as coaches, and that speaks to the first block. My attitude as a coach is to be very aware that we don't jump in and say, okay, I've seen that 20 times previously, because my client is a unique human being sitting in front of me, and I must help them to understand their narrative within their context, and then work with that narrative, that they come up with a solution which is best for them. And then if we think about it, that stories is just the stories which we tell ourselves about ourselves as well as others, because we create stories also around other people. So, and then if we bring that back to ontology and integral coaching, that's very much, if we think of language, stories is to a large extent the assertions and assumptions we make about stuff. So that sits, if we think about this specifically then assessments, that sits in our values, in our beliefs. And if we think about assertions, is that we as grew up with, that our parents and our families told us that's the truth about the world. Also what our communities and what is expected of us tell us, and that creates the stories we live in. And then we must ask ourselves and our clients, is this story serving us, or are we actually serving the story? So it's actually liberating in terms of ourselves. And that's where the power of story lives. And Daniel Dennett writes in Conscious Explained, he writes the following, and he calls it narrative gravity. He argues that this is the fundamental means by which we protect ourselves, have some measures of self-control, in which we define ourselves. He suggests that our fundamental tactic of self-protection, self-control, and self-definition is not spinning webs of building dams, but telling stories, and more particular, concocting and controlling the stories we tell others, ourselves, about who we are. We do not consciously and deliberately figures out what narratives to tell and how to tell them. Our tales are spun, but for most part, we not spin them, they spun us. Our human consciousness and our narrative selfhood is their product, not the source. And then Wallace Trunet Anderson makes a point, or actually I quoted out of his book, Reality Isn't What It Used to Be. He makes the statement, we repeatedly create symbolic systems of meaning, religion, political ideologies, scientific theories, and forget they are our own creations. And then if I can be philosophical for a moment, I think the thing that we work every day is money. And money and time is most probably the two things that causes our clients the most pain, and both of those are human made and made by ourselves, and we create our own concepts around that. And I think the fundamental thing around those is the stories of our either telling ourselves that there's enough abundance, there's more than enough for us, for all of us, or that we adapt the story that of scarcity, that there's not enough, and that causes us then pain and is not serving us well. So if we then get to that first two blocks as such, what would you say is then important for us in terms of attitudes as coaches if we engage with the stories we see of our clients as such? What is important if we think then in the context of narrative therapy and storytelling? What is important? What must we as coaches take into consideration before we start engaging with our client stories?
Possibly for us to be aware of our own biases and our own judgments and assessments. So we could, when they tell us a story, believe that we know the answer. We want to jump in and just save them completely so quickly. And we don't drill down to really see, well, what do they really mean? What's true, false? What don't you know? Be more curious.
Yeah, I think very valuable. Thanks, Susan.
I also think that we need to approach our clients' stories with with great sensitivity, because those stories serve a purpose in their lives, and so that we don't, dismantle stories that has a specific purpose without them necessarily having the emotional capacity at that stage to deal with a new narrative.
I think that's very true, and I think that's part of that, respecting our clients, which is one of the fundamental, and seeing our clients as unique human beings with their own stories. And it's up to them to decide if the story is serving them or not serving them. So yeah. Any thoughts, Mary J?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are very important ones. The almost beginner's mind concept, like not knowing, coming with that beginner's mind, that you might experience something different or learn something different from your client today about their situation from their unique perspective. That means that you couldn't have come up with the answer yourself, or found a solution on their behalf.
Thank you very much. I think that's so true, to also be in wonder for the client story. And I think the wonder of a coaching approach is, and I always say that in 9 out of 10 times, I also learn from a conversation. So that's the wonder of, and the privilege of being a coach, is we learn from our clients' stories. We see so much of ourselves sometimes in those stories. And I think one of the things that one must be conscious of is that we actually walking alongside our clients, being their thinking partners and the questioning partners for that time that we've got with them. However, they've got an expectation that we most probably must give them the answer. So that's a lot of clients that actually pitch at our desks, is they want the answers from us. And from a normal advisor viewpoint, that's so easy then to become the expert. But the expert in this situation is something different. The expert is somebody that can ask the questions and see the client as the expert, and that the client explore the answers. And actually, I say a great coaching conversation is if the client walk away and say, okay, was that a problem? What was the problem? And the reality they have changed during the process. So we there to facilitate the questions and answers. So yeah, and I think the things that we must perhaps be careful of is we can easily also, and that comes to that expert thing, is to start applauding what the client is actually sharing as to, oh, I can see myself in your story, which we actually then no longer are respectful to the client because we want to make their story the same as our story, or judge or assume to, and you referred that to that specifically, Mary J. So yeah, and we're not the fixers. Johan Mazondile, thoughts from yourself from looking in, so that came up for you that as coaches, and just perhaps the general theory, thinking about the general theory of using stories and because I think we don't have to refer to narrative maps or narratives. It's actually stories that we engage with every day, which is our clients' stories, which we unpack then through conversation to create new narratives for our clients and ourselves, and we grow through that process. What comes up for you, and how do you see the application of that?
For me, to engage with a client for the first time it's very important to understand where he came from. How did he get to where he is currently? How did he get his financial situation? How did he get into his financial situation that he's currently in as well? What was his objectives, his needs, his goals? What is he looking at? What does he still want to achieve? What did he achieve in the past? Because all that information is going to help me building my relationship going forward, because his stories is not going to disappear. His stories is going to be part of the plan that you're going to go forward with. So that's why this is all important for me.
So mine is just probably a question rather than a comment. As I said, I work with PPS, and you know, professionals, which most of you are professionals, they're very time starved. Where do you find this time to sit 2-3 hours and let client tell you their stories? Because we don't have that kind of luxury. How do you unlock that in a client? So it's just more the question for the guys. It sounds like you guys spend lots of time unpacking their dreams, and I mean, obviously, I mean, we know the 6-step process of financial planning, but coaching it's just more complex than information gathering that you do in the 6-step process. Is it like a once-a-month intervention? Is it a quarterly intervention? Is it a multi-tech intervention? Yeah, just be nice to hear from all of you.
So I don't mind sharing how I work. So I haven't done it specifically as Johan was unpacking it, but I think, and I haven't, often I talk about the financial story, but I have been unconsciously doing it. So I hadn't been doing any form of coaching course, but we are all our story. We all are our beliefs about money come from often cemented in our childhood. So I'll have that conversation with my clients in part of my meeting them. So when I meet them first, if they're a new client, it'll be what's the objective for meeting with me? What are they hoping to get out of it? And then when it comes to their goals, that's part of your planning. If they're in debt, or you hear them saying, but I can't, or it's always, or there's certain terminology they use, then you go back and go, well, where does that come from? So explain that part to me. And that is often the story. So I think, you know, when you talk now, the old days of being a financial planner, when it was a hit, you're going in, you're selling a product, you're changing the product, and then you're moving on. That's different. So it all depends on how you engaging with your clients. I think that if you are really wanting to know the whole person and you're not just selling them an income protection or a tax-free, you get to unpack a bit more. It all depends on the client as well, and their time and their willingness to have a conversation. So it depends on what their client is looking for. If that makes sense.
So it's over multiple engagements that you get to.
Yeah. So my
that level of.
Yeah. So my first time I ever meet someone, it's never about a product. It's always about their story. It's about why did they come to see me in the first place. So I always tell them that hour is for me to understand them more what they're looking for, and then we'll only get into the product at a later stage. It's understanding them first, and then coming up with the solutions if they are any. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not a product. Sometimes it's actually getting them out of debt, and that's more important than giving them an investment. So it depends on your objective, and my business is mature enough that I can afford to do that because I don't need to sell anything to earn my keep. So it all depends on where you are in the cycle as well. I'm guessing.
So you just charge them an advice, a planning fee, because we charge planning fees. I mean, obviously there's commission, etc. And then is coaching part of your planning fees?
Yeah, that's why I said I've always been doing it unconsciously, and I'm only now starting to go, well, how do you charge for that? So I've always charged an hourly fee. Yeah, and it's part of
planning fee.
Planning fee, yeah.
Yeah, perhaps just for interest sake, Mazundile, that will be of interest. Susan is also a high supporter of lifestyle planning, so and the Mitch Anthony concept of engaging with clients. So I think that's also a great contributor to the way that she engages with clients. So yeah,
lifestyle planning. Thanks, Susan.
Mary J, perhaps a view from your side, because we come from the other side now.
my fingers on the trigger there, waiting for to share my thinking. But I support what Susan's saying. I also work over multiple engagements. And I mean, I take clients through a 12-hour planning process before we get to products. 12 hours. Yeah, not in one sitting, over 6 sessions. And if we do product, it's another 4 hours after that to look at products. So it's extensive, but it's because of wanting to really get to what's holding them back. And I loved how Susan brought the example of you look for those moments. So it isn't always sit down and tell me, everything that's going wrong for you. The client doesn't know, but you spot the moments. And an example I can give is I sat with a client last week who was supposed to be looking at doing projection of her income and expenses over the next 3 months so that we could, plan a couple of things. She couldn't get to the numbers. She was blocked. And I saw that was the moment to go into the story and go into what's going on inside of her that's preventing her, because I can talk numbers and it's just going whoosh and she's completely disengaged. And we spent an hour and a half talking and unpacking, and it turned out that she has an issue around trust. And we then explored what trust means to her, and there was a whole, narrative behind that. And that was the value she got from our session. The following session, we were able to get to the numbers, but it was, it's noticing where it's appropriate and where the client needs you to be curious and to go into that. And that's the partnership, because it wasn't my agenda. My agenda was we're going to look at the numbers. And then on the time issue, I also believe in charging for my time. If you're not charging for your time in a direct, like hourly rate or fee, then you've got to think of how else you're packaging your process and what you're selling, because it does take time. But if the client's getting value, then it's something you can charge for. They'll see the value and want and be willing to pay.
Yeah, also I hear about the fees and the charging and all that kind of stuff. When I make an appointment with a client for the first time, I don't go in with any costing or fees or anything like that. My first engagement is first to get the client to understand what I'm doing, and also to get that story behind them. And out of that, when we agree on the path forward, that is where the fees and stuff will only start. I never talk about any costing or fees or anything with my initial 15 half an hour engagement with the client.
Okay. Thanks, Johan.
I think to Mary J's point, I think an important part is how do you position the value proposition and also the expectation from the client, because although those professionals is so busy, that busyness also causes them not to spend time to think about their money and their lives. So it's
Yeah.
unbelievable value that we can bring to the table as part of the process. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I shared the last time, Hendrik, is that we do have that where we also charge fee, and it's our success has been extremely limited. I mean, even though we only work with doctors, lawyers, and CAs who are for their profession, they charge fees. When everyone else out there is offering the same coaching that Mary J is talking about for free, because they're interested in that 50,000 a month premium that they know they'll get, risk premium, and the Glacier assets under management that they will get. It makes it quite difficult and compelling to then justify why I must pay 4,000 rand an hour, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think
So I'm saying that is the challenge. A lot of people are offering something similar, not the same, because like you're saying, I don't think anyone offers 12 hours like Mary J does, but they offer a 4-hour intervention where they will get them to a level of understanding their dreams, their aspirations, and their relationship with money, their risk profiles, and put together a plan, and all for free. I mean, Hendrik, a lot of people we worked with who do that, right? In the past.
Yeah, I think the big distinction.
Natis does that, right? Wouldn't you call Natis a coach, for example?
I think that falls. I would most probably put him into that category, but I think there's two important points, and Susan, Mary J, you can most probably also come in here, is the way of being of the planner themselves. So what do I actually want to go and offer my client? Have I really adapted in my heart and soul the new way of engaging? And I think Dantes is a good example of that. That you talk, although he's not formally trained as a coach, that was always, he would walk away from help a client and walk away without charging anything due to the fact that he's caught up in a commission and assets under management framework. So is that also fair to the planner? Offering a client 5, 6, 7 hours of work and then don't get remunerated for that great value add and service you're offering the client, and I think that's important, and in my mind the conflict of interest that sits also within that, because to Susan's point, if it's somebody that's just starting out in the industry, then I actually need to churn this product, or I need to write the product. So then it's very difficult to distinguish yourself between the client's agenda and your own agenda. So yeah, so just
all right, thanks guys, thanks for addressing that. So you can carry on, Hendrik, with the sorry for derailing a bit.
So to make it a little bit more practical for us in the next 25 minutes, and we'll jet a little bit across the diagram, is then have any one of you got a client that had a story that you would like us to explore? So have a problem narrative or problem story that we can then use the form to further explore for our purposes of our session today.
Well, I don't mind. I think I have a friend who's got a poverty mindset, though she's got enough money, and it infiltrates in her relationship with her husband, her child. It's always deprivation. So it's about having this much wine and about this much of anything, and it's constantly a narrative. And was even a comment she'd made, her husband is RX and a preserver was more than hers. And she was like, that's not fair. I've been saving my whole life. I was like, yeah, but you've got all the properties in your name that you paid off with his money. So like there was just her lack of, it's always not fair, and it's not going to be enough. And that's her driving force. It takes away her joy of life, and it absolutely affects her relationships. So I wouldn't mind exploring that if anybody else would like to explore that kind of mindset.
Okay, let's go. So we put in the challenges. Would you call it then life is not fair, or how will you call this
I would
story?
say I have to work so hard for my money. Life is not fair. Fear of.
Okay, then we go to 4,
Yeah,
and
scarcity. Like a,
yeah, so scarcity. Then we go to 4, exploring the current narrative. So, and what we're now going to do is there's 2 ways of doing it. One can say to the client because it's sometimes the beauty of a narrative, working with the narrative is, and especially if we go the route of putting that distance out between the client and separating it, we can even say, if we're in a study or in the client's sitting room or whatever, we can say, okay, the chair over there is now the story we're going to explore, and the story is sitting in the chair, and the story that sits in the chair we call then life is not fair. And then that the client can see it's actually something that's sitting outside of them. And back to Marguerite's point, being also respectful of the client, and we then start, and the client can actually then ask the questions to the chair, and the discussion is about the chair and the narrative that sits in the chair. And we can we can then just all participate. Is we'll go with questions like, tell us how this narrative shows up in how the narrative showed up in your recent past. And let's all just take a turn and answer a question. So Susan, you can go with the first one. Is tell us how this narrative showed up in the recent past.
okay, so I'm answering the question.
Yeah, so you
Or am I
answered.
asking a question?
Yeah. But due to the fact that we externalize that, everybody can take part in,
Okay.
whatever shows up. So yeah.
So how it shows up is that I think I might want to divorce my husband so I don't have to share my money when I retire.
Okay, that's a good example. What evidence do you have of the story of life not being fair? So, and let's say Mazundile, you answer that one.
You're saying life not being fair, Hendrik? I'm
Yeah.
not getting
So
the question.
yeah. So, what evidence do you have that life is not fair?
What evidence do I have that life is not fair is the end of life, how we all exit it. We all start the same way, but we live it differently.
Fantastic. Mary J, where do this narrative show up?
Where did this show up?
Yeah.
It showed up in my relationship with my husband.
And Marguerite, what does this narrative cause then in terms of the relationship in people's marriages and husband as such?
Resentment. Yeah, I think it's hugely unfair that he's got more money in the bank than I have while I've worked so hard and paid bills and everything, and I've got less to show for it.
Johan, what would you say is the assessments that you make around this point of life not being fair, your husband having more than what you've got? For the sake of what are you making this assessment, and what is perhaps some of the taken for granted beliefs that you've got around this? I think you muted, Johan.
said when I married him, we stood there and we said we're going to be together forever, for poorer and for wealth and for everything. But now it seems like what he's got is his. I've also worked hard to build on his wealth, but I'm pulling on the short end at this stage. So there's no fairness in it. Me helping him, supporting him where he got to, and I can't share in that.
Back to you, Susan. If you look then at the life is not fair there and the influences it's got in terms of your marriage and your life as such, who gives the authorization to life is not fair sitting there in the chair to take ownership of your life and influencing your life?
I'm giving it, and it's because of what I believe, because it's just the way it is.
And who have you, and I'm going to stay with you now, Susan, for the next question is, who have you asked to authorize that narrative in your life? So whom did you mandate? Because you say you took the decision to authorize it in your life.
It's me. I have to make sure that I am always protected. Who's going to look after me?
And how does it play out and influence people's relationships around you and in general life by having this narrative of life is not fair? And let's go back to you, Mazundile.
It puts you definitely in that whole scarcity lane rather than the abundance lane. If you in your engagement with your stakeholders. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mazundile. Marguerite, when is life is not fair and the thing about money in your life and being afraid that you do not have enough, when is it at its strongest and weakest in your life?
When towards the end of the month, when the bills are due, then I would say it's strongest. And just after a huge bonus came in, I would say it's weakest.
Thank you very much. Mary J, how do you sometimes sidestep this, or is it always prevalent in your life?
When I'm feeling emotionally resilient, I'm able to notice it and sidestep it. But more often than not, it's always playing out in my life.
Johan, what will you, after listening to yourself and looking at life is not fair and the impact on your life and money, what name will you give to this narrative?
Self-pity.
Okay, back to you, Susan. If you think about self-pity and how does this narrative serve you and people in the world?
Well, it makes me, I can justify my actions because, yeah, I get to justify why I'm doing what I'm doing and why I behave like I behave.
Do you think it serves you, or does it actually cause you pain deep down?
It causes me pain deep down.
Would you say, and I'm going to stay with you just for the moment, Susan, would you say it would be worthwhile exploring a new narrative?
Now that I'm thinking about it differently, yes.
What relationship will you have with the old narrative because it served you up to this point? If you have to adapt a new narrative.
So my relationship would be, it's about my past and it's about my thoughts. So it would maybe make me realize that my belief system is separating me from the people that actually I do love and have my back. And separating me from my money and the joy that I can have.
Okay, so if we have to put the old narrative to bed because it's clear that there's new value that you can get out of a new narrative, and we have to have a funeral for the old narrative. What will you say is a worthy funeral to have for the old narrative, to say goodbye to the old narrative?
A worthy funeral. What do you mean by a worthy funeral?
So having a ritual, it don't have to be, I call it a funeral, which is most probably not, because it did serve you, but a ritual or a party to say bye for it, because it did serve you up to this point. It did have value for you because it made you successful. It kept you away from pain you had previously in your life, etc. So it served you, but if you have to say goodbye to it so that you can adapt a new narrative, what will you say is a worthy ritual that you can have?
Well, I could get my cheapest bottle of wine and I could put my 2 fingers in it and my 2 slices of pizza with only 1 piece of pepperoni, because that's all I've ever been allowed myself to have. And thank the narrative for what it's brought to my life. And with that last bite and that last sip, throw it away and decide I'm going to have a much better feast the next time I eat and drink, enjoying my new way of thinking.
Thank you. I think that's really a worthy ritual to say goodbye to the old narrative. So now we move to the middle block to say, and Susan, I'm going to stand just a moment still to take the narrative over to the new block. To the thing is what do you want from the new narrative? What is the vision that you have got for that new narrative?
I'd like to have a freedom when I think about my money, and a freedom to not resent the people in my life for what they are, what they haven't, what I thought they should give me and what they shouldn't give me, and just enjoy the people that are in my life and enjoy what I have.
Okay, Mazundile, if we move to you, and I'll share the detailed questions to you later on. I'm just, for the matter of time, just going to
Thank you.
go through the map for the moment. Is if we think about relationships, how will this new narrative influence your relationship with the people that you love?
Yeah, I mean, to evolve them, right? It's an evolution from fixed to growth state, where you're always fixated in the person that you were, and now you're more exploratory and accepting of new influences in your life that then define your future much better.
Thank you very much, Muzundile. Marguerite, who will you ask and enroll to support you with the new narrative and embedding the new narrative in your life?
Well, first of all, my coach, to ask him to keep on holding me accountable, but also my family, to say to them, you know what, I've noticed that this was how I've related to money, and as an extension of that, to you in the past, and I acknowledge that it's harmed our relationship, and I would like to ask you forgiveness and ask you to please help me, hold me accountable, show me, or make me aware of it if I fall back into that old habit, because you're the people closest to me and probably the ones most able to see it pop up every now and again.
Thank you very much, Marguerite. Mary J, if you think about implementing the new narrative and living the new narrative, what possible challenges do you foresee that you need to be aware of so that you can stay in terms of embedding the new narrative and living the new narrative?
Remembering the new narrative, challenges as it's getting towards the end of the month and I'm feeling like my money is running out. That'll be a challenge.
Thank you very much. Johan, in terms of implementing the new narrative and living the new narrative, what is an acceptable alternative future story for your life? How will it look, and what action do you need to take?
I think part of the way forward is that I will have to budget my money to see what do I have, where do I spend it, what do I do with my money, that it doesn't how do you say, run out. It mustn't run out. That I'm feeling that I'm going to drop back into where I came from. It's to plan better going forward.
Thank you, Johan. If we then move to the bottom block, what will be different to your life with the new narrative? And Susan, from your side, what will you see when you now shared your vision for the new narrative, the engagement in terms of relations to support the new narrative? How do you see it will be different for you, and what benefits will it have for you?
So I think my relationship with my husband would be better, and that would make us, we would have a happier relationship. And I wouldn't have that stress and anxiety the whole time about not having enough. And I wouldn't look at everything as not being enough and having to buy the cheapest of everything because I just don't think it's enough. So I think my quality of life and just with my relationship with myself and my possessions and my husband would greatly improve.
Okay. What will you name the new narrative if we then move to the second last block?
There's always enough.
Is always enough. And what ritual will you put in place to remember and just celebrate this moment that you took to take a new life of there's always enough?
Whenever I pour something, whenever I eat something, whenever I look at something, I'll always know that I can eat it with enjoyment, drink with enjoyment, and never have to be worried that it's never going to be enough. So taste and enjoy and be.
Yeah. Mary J, just to conclude the last block, what do you expect me and how can I support you as coach in terms of follow-up and commitments to ensure that we keep on celebrating this new narrative?
like to check in with you every 2 weeks to see how it's going and share my successes or explore any challenges along the way.
Thanks, Amal. And that was it. Check out in the next 3 minutes, and we can go, whoever wants to go first. What struck you of the process?
I'll go.
Okay, you go.
No, you go, Susan.
I thought it was succinct. It was vivid, and it could move you.
Thanks.
It's exactly just like how the session is. The answers are from within, rather external. You just have to dig deeper within yourself. And like that thing that just happened with me and Susan now. We're all ready to listen to each other rather than to dictate. You go, you go. Whereas had it been a year ago, we'd be telling you, no, I've got the answer. But we're willing to.
I think it's also realizing that there's always a solution. You must just explore and look at opportunities of how to get to that solution.
Something that's playing out in my brain was, I'm not sure if any of you were at the FPI convention, but the last guy who presented, Justin, I think his name was presented a short film called Street Surfers. And he quoted something along the lines about, if you can't find the solution to the problem, like you're asking the wrong questions, or you're looking at the problem wrong. So you need to ask different questions. And this is what it feels like this process unlocks is, clients come to us with their problem and then look for a traditional solution. And by taking this kind of approach, we can help them ask the right questions to find the solution to the right problem, not the symptom, which is what got them there in the first place. So that sticks out for me.
Thank you very much, Mary J.
I really like the idea of putting the story in a separate chair to just help the client obtain distance from it and look at it from different angles.
Yeah, from my side, a big thank you for all your participation. It was, for me, an opportunity to go and look at some stuff again and just bring it to the fore again. And thanks for your participation. It was a wonderful learning opportunity again for me and for this wonderful space that we can co-create and share. And yeah, thank you very much, and all of the best for the month that's ahead for all of you. And it feels like a thought, and we're already in November. So yeah,
It's crazy.
crazy.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.